Nope.
I guess we can get started.
All right. Sounds great. So here we go. You guys get the nice music. Shoot the do
Kyle, thanks for the intro. Yeah.
Science, technology, trèSci with a dash, even though we don't spell it with a dash. That needs to be updated. And 3, 2, 1. What's up, guys? Hey, welcome to the trèSci Weekly, episode 16. Today is Monday, May 22nd, 2017, and I am one of your hosts, Jonathan Ullman, alongside a slightly lower resolution, Tom K.
What's up, guys? 360p coming at you.
Yeah. So, as many of you guys have been helping us kind of fix our audio-visual problems in the past few moments, you're definitely aware that Kyle is not with us tonight, unfortunately.
He hasn't passed away or anything.
No.
He's still with us.
He's still with us, yeah.
Okay.
Still
Just
with
wanna
us
clear that up.
in spirit, yeah.
But he's not here in the house.
Yeah, so he had to go take a job. I actually have no idea what he's doing, to be honest with you. But he's off being a big boy, making money. So
we'll let him do his thing.
Yeah, so this show is going to probably be a little bit more off the cuff, if you will. We don't have all the fancy overlays and all the fancy visuals and all the fancy videos that we typically would put up, although I did get the nice trèSci Live overlay to work, so I was very proud of myself for that one. So this one, we're going to probably read from some articles directly that we can flip to, and it'll be more of like a
discussion.
Yeah, like a John and Tom's corner, a big John and Tom's corner this week.
Yeah, one big corner. So
thank you guys for bearing with us on that. Hopefully next week we'll kind of return to the normal format of the show, but I think you guys will hopefully enjoy this one just as well.
Yeah.
If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the show. This is our weekly video podcast where Tom and I discuss science news topics that are trending, and we kind of offer our thoughts and opinions and insight to them. If you like this kind of thing, please hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. That always helps us grow a little bit and reach a wider audience. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/trèSciWeekly. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/trèSciWeekly. And if you felt so inclined to support us financially, you can go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/trèSciWeekly.
And big shout out to all the people who have done that so far.
Absolutely, yeah.
Much appreciated.
Huge shout out. Yeah, definitely helps keep things moving in the right direction. So thank you guys for that. With that said,
I think we're ready to go.
Yeah. I didn't ask you how you're doing. I normally ask you how you're doing.
But we took a little while to get going.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
All right.
How are you, Ben?
I'm good. Long week, long work week. Some of you guys heard me complaining about it before we started the show proper. This is going to be another long week upcoming, but yeah, that's okay. That's just how it goes sometimes. All right, so let's get right into it. The first story comes by way of the journal Nature, and it's an article. The title of the article is "Locally Noisy Autonomous Agents Improve Global Human Coordination in Network Experiments." And this was published in the journal Nature on May 18th, 2017. By Hirokazu Shirato and Nicholas A. Christakis.
Yep.
So I'm just going to read through the abstract for you guys, and then we'll kind of
break it down
a little bit, and then talk a little bit more about it. So it says, quote, "Coordination in groups faces a sub-optimization problem, and theory suggests that some randomness may help to achieve global optima. Here we performed experiments involving a networked color coordination game in which groups of humans interacted with autonomous software agents known as bots. Subjects, 4,000 of them, were embedded in networks, 230 of those, of 20 nodes, to which we sometimes added 3 bots. The bots were programmed with varying levels of behavioral randomness and different geodesic locations. we show that bots acting with small levels of random noise and placed in central locations meaningfully improve the collective performance of human groups, accelerating the median solution time by 55.6%. This is especially the case when the coordination problem is hard. Behavioral randomness worked not only by making the task of humans to whom the bots were connected easier, but also by affecting the gameplay of the humans among themselves and hence creating further cascades of benefit in global coordination in these heterogeneous systems. So
yes, a lot of words, but this one is extremely interesting.
extremely interesting. So,
So there's a task given to people, and what the study has concluded is that by adding artificial intelligence bots and putting in a certain specific amount of randomness, that allowed the group of people to coordinate better and complete their task, as opposed to having all people being in the network trying to complete it together.
Yep. So let's, I guess, break down and try to explain how the experiment was designed, how the game went, right? So, I'm tempted to like draw it on the whiteboard. Hold the phone. I'll be right back. Really quick. 2 seconds. Should have thought of this earlier. My bad, guys. Like I said, off the cuff. Hang on. All right.
Yeah, so John is tempted.
I'm grabbing markers. Here we go.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Break out the old trusty whiteboard, which you guys probably haven't seen since episode 1.
Yeah, I think you're right with that one.
All right. So basically, the game looks something like this, where
I would consider it more like a task than a game, right?
yeah,
Just so we're clear. Episode 1, the Phantom Cut.
So and let me draw some lines connected.
So the object of the experiment or the task was to get all the people in the system to be able to interact with each other in a way so that they would not have the same color node next to them, right?
Right. So 3 different color nodes. I think they use green, blue, and orange.
Yep.
And each person, right, was responsible for one node, right? So let's say I'm playing, upstairs on my laptop, and maybe I'm in control of this node here, which right now is a green node. The object is for me to be the ones that I'm connected to can't also be green. They have to be a different color.
But you only know the nodes that you're connected to, right?
Right. So you can't see the whole playing field. You only know what you're connected to. So if one of your neighbors turns green and you're currently green, then you might consider changing your color. And you can change it any time.
Yeah. So instead of just allowing people going back and forth trying to pick what color should I have, putting in a few random bots periodically changing their color as opposed to a person doing it just when they think they should, that small amount of randomness allowed them all to coordinate better and complete the task with those artificial intelligence bots put in the nodes as opposed to all people.
Right. So they ran the experiment kind of in 2 different manners where all 20 nodes, I didn't draw 20 of them, but all 20 nodes were controlled by individual people, each node by a person, and then they found that they gave them a time limit to try and figure out how to get all the nodes that are connected to be different colors. And they found that humans would run into trouble here because
they kind of get stuck.
they would get stuck, right?
They
one
wouldn't
person,
know when to change or when to stay.
right? And then they conducted the same experiment with 3 of the nodes being controlled by autonomous bots or artificial intelligence, and they set.
And they would kind of just like spice it up almost, right?
Yeah.
They would just
they would
elicit some sort of change.
they would randomly be like, okay, well, I was blue, now I'm green, and just totally throw off kind of the coordination.
And then the article said that that would convince someone else next to them to possibly change, and then have a cascade of effect to sort of allow a change to go out through the system that would eventually help solve it, that might not have been there without that small bit of randomness.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, they're by adding the bots, they kind of brought the median time to solve this system down from 232 seconds to 103 seconds. So just by putting in a few random blips here and there, it increased the efficiency of the humans that were also part of this system.
And it was less than half the time.
Yeah. So the other thing...
And then the last thing was that the bots with 0% or 30% didn't outperform, it says, the Goldilocks zone of randomness. So there's a certain amount of that randomness you want in your system. And we were saying that kind of makes sense. You don't want chaos, because then you can't really make sense of it.
Right.
But that small spice of randomness was exactly what these people needed to help complete the task.
Right. The bots were set at a certain periodicity, right? A certain frequency of randomly changing the color, because if they were, set to 100%, let's say, then that bot is just firing off, always changing, and the humans that are part of the system can't accomplish anything. So they had to set it at precisely the right kind of percentage in order to disrupt what the humans were trying to accomplish.
And help just sort of elicit some sort of change and allow a cascade effect of what ended up being cooperation in the end.
Right. So I thought this was fascinating. Right?
Yeah, really interesting study.
This was kind of my topic of choice for this week. This was the one that caught my eye. I read the study and I was like, all right, this since we're not going to have a whole heck of a lot of visuals anyway, let's just focus down on this one.
It's nice and interesting.
And you and I have been sort of relating this to the nature of how we play video games, right? So both of us have been playing like competitive, cooperative games for a long time.
You're on a team, you got to coordinate, cooperate, and take down the enemy team.
Yeah, and we've seen that when you're on your team of 6 players in the game Overwatch, that when you're trying to accomplish capturing a point or moving an objective across the map, if your team is having trouble doing that, sometimes the best thing to do is to just do something totally random.
Something that catches people off guard and allows a chain of events to happen.
Right.
As opposed to just sitting around waiting and hoping things sort of coordinate.
Yeah.
Like just that little bit of spark of initiation is really all you need sometimes to get things going.
Yeah, absolutely. And this seems to scientifically prove that in a small sense, in a way of saying like, well, this bot is sort of disrupting the nature of the flow that the humans have, and by doing that, it changes the mindset of the human.
Yeah,
right?
That's taking part in this. Yeah.
By seeing, because I guess that's important to specify, is that the human players don't know that there is a bot. They don't know that that's an AI. They think that
all they see is a change of color.
Right. So they know they're playing the game, so they assume that the game is being played by other humans. So by watching somebody do something kind of...
Yeah, they see it. Someone's changing their node. Be like, maybe I should change my node.
Exactly.
Like, if they're changing so much, maybe I should.
Right.
It sets this chain of events going.
Right. And to purposefully maybe change to the same color, even though that's not the objective, that can then make somebody do the same thing, right? It gives you the courage to be like, well, I know I'm not supposed to be green if my neighbors are green, but I have one neighbor that's blue, I'm going to switch to blue, just because. I know it's not helping, but
we might as well change it up.
We might as well change it up. So
yeah.
That's very fascinating to me, and the authors of the study say that this might have some kind of application in corporate settings.
Yeah, but they don't know how to correlate these results to the actual corporate setting.
Right.
But you could see how it sort of makes sense, where this built-in randomness just helps allow change to occur, helps allow things to progress, things to flow. But in a real-life business situation, like, how do you throw out a random business idea? You know what I mean? Like, if you're selling computer processing chips, like, oh, we should sell chipwich sandwiches. Like, is that really helping anybody? You know what I mean? Like, randomness in a game of colors, that's a very simple example, and randomness sort of makes sense.
Right.
But trying to apply this to a broader sense of people cooperating, it seems like more needs to be done. Right?
Yeah.
But really interesting study to show what could be possible.
Yeah. And to sort of full circle bring this again back into the realm of video games, one of the co-authors on this study, Hirokazu Shirado, he was involved with Sony way back in the 90s, I guess it was, when another person on their sort of board of directors pitched the idea of getting into the video game console market, which was a random sort of
left field,
idea, and that went on to go on to become the PlayStation, which would be a super successful venture for Sony.
So he happens to mention it in the article by saying that it was sort of a random idea out of left field, and just goes to show you that it ended up being, you know, something great for us.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of what made him pursue exploring these type of ideas.
Yeah. So really fascinating. This article then lends itself to another article that's related in a sense, and this I didn't make this connection. This was kind of written by Matthew Hudson, who writes for Science Magazine. He linked another similar study that I think is also very interesting.
Very worthwhile.
And it's a little bit older, but here we go.
So before we get right into it, Chris in the chat said it's kind of like a no risk, no reward dynamic. So I kind of like the way you're saying that, where sometimes people can get stagnant, they could get stuck in doing what they're doing, and it can get kind of frustrating and confusing when you're working with other people, like to predict what they're going to do, and you don't know exactly when a person's going to get going or when they're going to stay where they are. But where it's like no risk, no reward, if somebody's doing something, at least the system is kind of interacting, at least.
Yeah.
It's to some degree, right?
Yeah. I mean, movement, flow of any sort is better than stagnation. Stagnation, you're dead, always. In the corporate setting, in, biological settings, So, it's a good point. Anything else from the chat before we move on?
No, I think we're good.
All right. So this other article here, this other study is called Tweetment Effects on the Tweeted, Experimentally Reducing Racist Harassment. And this is a study conducted by Kevin Munger. And so again, I'll just kind of read through the abstract and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So the abstract says, quote, I conduct an experiment which examines the impact of group norm promotion and social sanctioning on racist online harassment. Racist online harassment demobilizes the minorities it targets, and the open, unopposed expression of racism in a public forum can legitimize racist viewpoints and prime ethnocentrism. I employ an intervention designed to reduce the use of anti-black racist slurs by white men on Twitter. I collect a sample of Twitter users who have harassed other users and use accounts I control, again bots, to sanction the harassers. By varying the identity of the bots between in-group white men and out-group black men, and by varying the number of Twitter followers each bot has, I find that subjects who are sanctioned by a high-follower white male significantly reduce their use of a racist slur. This paper extends findings from lab experiments to a naturalistic setting using an objective behavioral outcome measure and a continuous 2-month data collection period. This represents an advance in the study of prejudice behavior. So,
I got a lot to say about this one, but
so basically, what Kevin Munger did is he created Twitter accounts, autonomous Twitter accounts,
which are bots essentially.
right, that would search for
He says he searched for the N-word on
right,
Twitter.
right, would search for, but specifically coming from white males
at black males.
at black males.
Yes.
Obviously. Yeah. So he filtered that search out, and then he kind of went through all the gambits of ensuring that it was indeed what seemed to be a racist derogatory mark, not just
some random
right.
thing, yeah.
Like if if he found that, you know, it was a conversation between kind of more friendly people and it wasn't really being used in that sort of derogatory racist context, then he threw that out of his data collection. So, but then he kind of went through and he set up an autonomous reply. And actually, let me get the exact reply for you guys. So he would have the bot reply at that person, "Hey man, just remember that there are real people who are hurt when you harass them with that kind of language." And that's what he means by sanctioning those racist comments out, right? So he would say this back to those people.
Yeah.
And he would monitor their account feed afterwards to see how many more times they would use the N-word in the 2 months following that. And what he found was it depends.
It depends on what the bot was, right?
Right. If the bot was portrayed as a white male with a lot of followers on Twitter, that's where he found the best results, right? That's where he found that the people he called out for saying that,
they were like, "Whoa, I better back off," kind
right,
of, right?
They stopped.
But
he found that
on the other side,
on the flip side, if it was a bot that represented a black man with not many followers, it actually had the inverse
entice
effect.
them, right?
Yeah,
to just keep going.
Exactly.
They're like, "Oh, this is a nobody, and I could just mess with this person," kind of thing, right?
And then somewhere in the middle ground would be a bot that represented a white man with not many followers.
Yeah.
And then below that, a bot that represents a black man with a higher amount of followers. So this struck me as very, very, I don't know.
It was very different, right?
Just a crazy study, right? So
yeah,
I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, it takes a lot of things right off the bat, sort of accepting that there's racism out there, right? We accept that. We know it's out there. And we know it's not a good thing. And everybody knows that it's unacceptable in mainstream society. It even says it in the article. So what we were talking about before is what's the classical way of teaching people about racism, how to respect another person, and how to, like, become empathetic towards them and understand their situation and not be a racist idiot. You know what I mean? Like, how do you go about learning that? And we were saying in the past it would be from compelling stories and movies and actual personal interactions, maybe with a celebrity coming to your school or somebody actually personally interacting with you to personally change your view of the world, right?
Yeah.
So this study isn't really trying to change your view of the world. It's trying to lower the amount of racial slurs that are coming out on Twitter.
Right.
So it's a completely
very specific.
Yeah, it's a completely different way of thinking about dealing with racism in our society.
Mm-hmm. At first glance, when I read this, I thought I had this knee-jerk reaction of, "Oh my God, we can't use autonomous bots to solve racism issues in our country. Like, that's never a good idea. It's never going to work." And like, there's something morally wrong about that.
It's disingenuous,
I think it is. Yeah, it's disingenuous in a sense. But then almost immediately I thought about it in the context of, well, how do you solve racism? How do you get somebody to stop
actually
using
take a
racist
step back?
Yeah. And you need to convey, like you said, that emotion to them, and they have to come to the epiphany that it is wrong.
Yeah,
right?
That's another person just like me, and this is...
And the only way to do that is by being told, right? By being sanctioned, by having somebody say, dude, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that's not cool.
Like you were saying, that's what made the demonstrations of Martin Luther King Jr. so powerful. It was a connection, a personal, a person up there standing up for what they truly believe,
Right.
not just trying to lower the amount of times a word gets said.
Yeah.
That's not a way to really end it, right?
We said so the analog to this is like back in the 60s during the civil rights movement, what if in place of great speakers like Dr. Martin Luther King, what if there were just autonomous
like announcements.
Yeah,
right?
announcements that got played that said, don't use racial slurs. That's
And it might
this
have
is
been
not
from
allowed
like
in our
a
society.
person you recognize from like a commercial, maybe like a movie star or something.
Yeah, I think that works to a degree, but it doesn't actually
Address the issue, right?
stop people from being racist, right? And I don't know. This is such a complicated problem. It's such a complicated problem because it's true. There is no place for racism in our society. There's no place for
now
it.
we all know that. Like it's scientific fact that based upon your nationality or race, you're not any better off. You know what I mean? You don't have superior genes. Like we know that. It's a scientific fact.
Mm-hmm.
So there is no place for racism in our society. But does this, like going about it this way, does it really change anything? I don't know. It's a very interesting study, though.
Yeah.
It really makes you think a lot about society in general and sort of just how it all plays out on the internet.
Yeah.
That's the whole other point about this is that it is on the internet. And the main point that they make is that it's not that social interaction that you get. And this sort of thing just propagates and gets worse and worse because it is on the internet and it gets bounced around where you can just do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of see where they're coming from is that this is it's a large issue in our society, but it's also a large issue online in general, outside of our society.
No.
So this might be one way to address the online racism,
Right.
and that might help as we continue as a society to tackle race issues in our daily society. It might be a way to supplement that, which I think might be helpful.
Yeah. Now you bring up a good point that we didn't mention. I think I sound very critical of this study, but I actually think there's some fascinating insight that you can learn from this. And one of those things that we didn't mention yet is the anonymity of the person making that racial comment, right? So the author found that if the person making the racial slur was somewhat more anonymous on Twitter, right? Maybe didn't post an actual picture of themselves in their profile picture, or didn't list, where they're from, or didn't have much in their bio.
They were just more anonymous.
Those people were actually more likely to stop saying racist comments. And that maybe is counterintuitive to what you might think, right?
It was for me. Like, if you have your information out there, wouldn't you really not want people to think you're racist?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought at first, but it turned out to be the opposite.
Yeah, being somewhat of a personality on Twitter and being proud of your presence on Twitter actually incites people to be
even more of a...
Or not even more racist, but proud of their racism, in a sense.
And upholding it,
Yeah, and that's really kind of scary, because that's such a horrible way to be. Such a horrible way to be, Tom.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I actually... There is a lot of racism in our society. I see it every day.
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially here in New York and on Long Island, sometimes I talk to people that think they're not racist, but they are
being it without even realizing it.
And they like say things like, well, I'm not racist, but, and then they say a racist comment, and I'm like, but you are, like, and I think that mentality has a little bit to do with the fact that people here think that white supremacists in the South are much more racist than we are here, meaning that it's acceptable that we are less severely racist up here.
I can see what you're saying there.
But that's just so not fair, you know? Like, no
Yeah.
level of racism is okay.
Yeah.
None. Literally zero is okay. So just because somebody else is doing it more so doesn't mean you have the right to be a little racist, whatever that means.
It's a good point.
So, I don't know. I'm really kind of appalled by that nature, and yeah, just had to speak my mind on that really quickly. How's chat doing over there?
Let's see what we're going on. Chris in the chat said that if you use autonomous bots or whatever to tell people to stop the racism, it's kind of an oxymoron. Because the point is to make people empathize and feel what the people on the other side feel.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, we were kind of saying that the only thing that this addresses is literally the number of slurs that are being written on Twitter.
Right.
It's not actually addressing anything that has to do with systematic racism in the United States.
Because we don't know, just because somebody
you're
stops
tweeting
after being called out on Twitter.
We don't know what they're doing, right?
It doesn't mean that they're going home at night and thinking to themselves, "Oh, I should have really never said that on Twitter." It's like, no, they're probably just as racist as they were before.
But they just don't say it on Twitter right now.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So I completely agree with that point.
But what an interesting study to go about. Like, I was thinking about what the guy must have been thinking about. Like, there's racism on Twitter. What if I can just try and get people to not be as racist on Twitter? It's kind of a noble effort, I think.
Yeah, and the fascinating thing is if you study sociology, it's really hard to get scientific data that is valid in this sense, right? How do you conduct an experiment in person where you call somebody out for being racist and then pull them back in 2 months later and say, so how are you feeling about that? Are you less racist now? Of course they're going to say yes. You know, like nobody wants to be called out again for it. So by virtue of Twitter's somewhat anonymous nature, right? You can
just allow it to happen.
Right. You can actually study this
over time
in a vacuum, in a sense. But again, that's still not a really appropriate a really appropriate measure of counteracting racism.
Totally agree. So another one was that Kayla was saying there's a detachment when people are conversing over the internet. So like what I was trying to mention before, that this sort of study is really only addressing the amount of slurs on Twitter. That's really all it's doing. And that's sort of where it comes from, is that mob mentality, like Chris says, and it just happens over the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, interesting study though. Really got us thinking.
Really got us thinking quite a bit. Yeah. So that's that.
But yeah, bots and how they relate to our lives is an interesting way to think. As you think of way artificial intelligence might creep its way into our society, like slowly but surely.
Yeah.
You know, like we see that there are benefits to these sort of things and how they interact with us. And I think over time we'll see more studies trying to use AI and bots and things.
Yeah. All right, shall we move on?
The rise of the machines. Okay.
That's the Destiny expansion.
Is it?
I think. All right, cool. Next topic, we're gonna go completely different direction here.
Totally opposite.
The next topic is gonna talk a little bit about the vault.
The vault,
if you will. All right, so here we go.
The vault is a pretty cool place.
This comes from The Guardian. Title of the article is Arctic Stronghold of World Seeds Flooded After Permafrost Melts. No seeds were lost, but the ability of the rock vault to provide fail-safe protection against all disasters is now threatened by climate change. So this was written sometime last week.
Yeah, it was in the middle of last week.
Yeah, I'm not really too sure. Oh, here we go.
May
19th. And it reads like so. It was designed as an impregnable deep freeze to protect the world's most precious seeds from any global disaster and ensure humanity's food supply forever. But the global seed vault, buried in a mountain deep inside the Arctic Circle, has been breached after global warming produced extraordinary temperatures over the winter, sending meltwater gushing into the entrance tunnel. The vault is on the Norwegian island of Spitsbergen, which is actually now referred to as Svalbard. Spitsbergen was the old Dutch name of that island. and contains almost 1 million packets of seeds, each a variety of an important food crop.
So as you keep going, I'm not sure if this is coming up where everybody can read it.
Oh. My apologies. Let's see if I can fix
enlarge
this.
it.
Yeah. How's that? Let's see.
Yeah, it might be better now.
All right. So, all right. When it was opened in 2008, the deep permafrost through which the vault was sunk was expected to provide fail-safe protection against the challenge of natural or man-made disasters. But soaring temperatures in the Arctic at the end of the world's hottest ever recorded year led to melting and heavy rain when light snow should have been falling. Quote, "It was not in our plans to think that the permafrost would not be there and that it would experience extreme weather like that," end quote, said Hegen Ja Ashim from the Norwegian government, which owns the vault. That's as much of the article as I want to read. I can post it in our Facebook group for you guys if you guys want to check out the full article. And the reason being, Tom, is because later on in the week...
Yeah, this really wasn't a big issue.
Yeah. So if we jump over now to Popular Science...
This was the next day.
The next day, Mary Beth Griggs writes, "Turns out the Svalbard seed vault is probably fine." Deep breaths, right?
So just before we get into this one, just to make sure we're all on the same page, the seed vault, it's just a backup, as we said, fail-safe. So it has seeds from every type of plant or that we can imagine, all in a place that should not be able to be contaminated at all by any means. And that should always be there in case there's whatever sort of natural disaster. So we have a seed bank of all of our seeds, which is pretty cool. When I first heard about it, I was like, wow, that's kind of a good idea.
Yeah, right? Like, sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, as you said.
Oh, don't worry, we have all the seeds.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah.
So
people were trying to make a big deal out of the water getting into it and sort of saying it's global warming's fault because rising temperatures, you get more water. Even the seed vault might be in trouble.
Yeah.
But it turns out
we're okay. So this article says, recently media reports emerged of water leaking into the entryway of the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, a facility that stores backup seeds for other seed banks all over the world. The facility is designed to be a backup for the backups.
Backup for backups.
In an email to Popular Science, Hegen Yashim,
same person as before,
as best as I'm going to be able to pronounce that, communications director for the Norwegian government-led organization Statsbygg, confirmed that the leaks happened last fall during a time of high temperatures and unusual rainfall in the Svalbard area. Quote, "This fall, October 2016, we had extreme weather in Svalbard with high temperatures and a lot of rain, very unusual. This caused water intrusion into the tunnel leading to the seed vault. The seeds in the vault was never at risk. This was no flooding, but more water than we like. So we are doing measures to improve and secure the entrance and tunnel," end quote, Hashim said.
So none of the seeds were ever in trouble.
None of the seeds were ever in trouble, Tom. That's the conclusion that we have here. And this is this is important. So first of all, kudos to PopSci, and I'm sure many of the other outlets,
people were like, they came to their senses the next day that this wasn't really.
And not to say shame on the Guardian for that reporting, but I think
it is a little bit misfounded.
Yeah.
I think.
And your point for this, Tom, is about the global warming issue, right?
Yeah, it just seemed like a convenient way to bring it up, where this is the fail-safe of all fail-safes. This is the last vault of all of our seeds that, it makes it seem like it's a really important big deal. It's all the way up north, it's really cold, and it seems like a convenient way to bring up global warming with melting permafrost, increasing water coming in, but it actually didn't even affect the seeds. So it just seemed like a convenient way to talk about global warming in a different context.
Right.
Where I feel like it kind of wasn't necessary to, where there's a lot of just news out there about global warming and other things that is more tangible and actually happening right now, as opposed to something that might be a good news headline to talk about global warming.
Right.
That's kind of what it seems like.
So let it be known, we can't cry wolf.
Whenever we want to,
We know that climate is changing, global temperatures are rising. We know that. That is scientific fact.
But
right?
you can't look for anything that sort of mirrors that and then say that it's because of global warming.
Exactly.
Anything that sort of points in that direction when you don't really need to.
Yeah.
In this case,
because it's actually dangerous. It's actually
you're counterproductive towards the actual scientific claims of global warming.
Right.
When you're kind of just putting these wishy-washy stories together to try and just bolster up your argument when it's not really backed by the credible science that you should be doing.
Yeah. And that then gets mistranslated into liberal fake news.
Yep.
Which is just all the ammunition that
anybody else needs. Yep.
Yeah. That people that naysay that the climate is changing. That's all the
look at this. They're pointing more fake news.
Yeah. So we have to be really careful, right?
Yeah, not just talk about global warming when you think it's convenient and a good time to just bring it up again.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you find an actual good article about it, we'll talk about it. Right?
Right.
I think that's a fair point.
Let the evidence speak for itself.
Agreed.
We don't have to misconstrue and we don't have to build all these fantastic stories about
the seed vault.
The seed vault is flushing out of water. Yeah, it's like that's not related.
Yeah,
right? The seed vault's fine, actually. So let's not cause a panic and let's not point fingers at the wrong things here.
Yeah, the boy who cried wolf. Exactly.
Yeah.
But, whenever it seems like a convenient time to bring it up, I guess they're sort of trying to push the idea. I mean, because it's an important topic and it's part of their agenda, I guess you could say. But, like we said, just do it the right way.
Yeah. And again, I don't mean to come down on the Guardian.
Not just them specifically, because it was all over my Twitter feed, this article when it first came out.
Yeah, and you'll notice even Popular Science has updated, right? Because they reported on it
as well.
Because who the heck wants to go all the way to Svalbard, dude?
Yeah,
that's
I'm not checking that out. Yeah, whatever you say, I'll take your word for it.
You have to go on an Arctic expedition to actually, get the first-hand evidence. So, so we understand. But just the cautionary tale, right?
Yeah.
Let's pump the brakes on things that don't need to be said when they're not entirely true. All right. So that's pretty much all we want to cover with you guys this week. Yeah.
So thanks for bearing with us and being here despite our. It wasn't as beautiful as it usually is because we're missing our production manager.
Yeah.
I guess you could call him.
So, but I mean, that's kind of nice because you guys now get to see exactly what Kyle brings to the table for us in terms of doing the show. And he does a really awesome job. So,
we miss him this week.
We
should be back next week, right?
Yeah. As far as I know. I hope
Hopefully.
So. Otherwise, you guys are stuck with this garbage truck. But no, thank you guys for your patience, for your cooperation with this kind of
mini hiccup.
Yeah, mini hiccup. Not really a hiccup, just shorter, less beautiful episode.
But we hope you still got the science out of it.
Yeah.
And
that's it.
Yeah.
So
as always, like I like to say, make sure you're tagging us in any science news that you see. I like to just be on the same wavelength as our viewers. So we don't have a song to outro with. Yeah, we don't have a cool song. Right so I don't know. Maybe Tom will just beatbox for us. Nah. But once again, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you had a good time, and join us again next week. Yep. See you then.